Hey, Jeremy.
Hey James, how's it going?
Very well. Nice to see you here. I'm very glad to be running our first episode of our LinkedIn podcast.
Me too. Really excited. Can't wait to share all our years of experience and knowledge related to LinkedIn with everybody and really just add a lot of value.
Totally. Well, feel free to kick off. I mean, one of the things that we're definitely doing here is colliding our audiences that we've built over the
Yeah.
years together. So feel free to let my audience know very quickly just a bit about yourself, what your expertise in, and what they're going
Yeah.
to learn from you.
Sounds good. My name is Jeremy Diouf. I am the co-founder of Synergy Reach, and we specialize in lead generation, organic content, and also advertising. So we're pretty well rounded in our approach. Um, my expertise is definitely also in the area of LinkedIn, both in organic and with ads. Understanding funnels has been a big part of my career as well. Understanding how content also helps with the whole ad process and the whole and in your funnel overall has been a big part of what I do in my career. So that's a little bit about me. I work with a wide range of clients, mainly in the B2B space though, but we've had some B2C clients as well. And I really like to take a well-rounded, holistic approach when it comes to marketing because some people say, lead gen, I just need more leads. And it's not just that. There's so much more to converting a customer. Um, it doesn't stop when someone becomes a lead. There's way more to that, and that's how we kind of approach our campaigns at Synergy is a very
No,
well-rounded, holistic
totally.
approach. So that's a little bit about me.
Totally. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, Jeremy. I mean, one of the things that we definitely do is we also specialize in B2B, and naturally that's why we've collided so well. And just to
Yeah,
let everyone know, for full transparency, we actually met through the same customer. I've known
yeah,
Jeremy now for the last year, and we've spoke weekly for the last year, which has been a really interesting experience, getting to know each other, and of course, hence why we've decided to do this together.
for
But
sure.
like yourself, we also specialize in sort of doing the organic stuff. I do have a paid background, but mainly in the Facebook and Google space. We've spent
Yeah,
up to $1 million in ad spend for customers, and it was a fantastic experience back in the day. But paid
mhm,
ads for me today is not something I like to do personally. So I'm very
yeah,
glad, Jeremy, that you specialize there. And of course, whenever we need it or any of our customers need it, we use you. So
yeah,
yeah. So, but overall, what I do is I typically specialize in helping brands build their personal brand. So whether that be the founder or CEO at a company, and
mhm,
ultimately we look to make personal connections where business relationships can thrive. And events like this are, of course, part of that process. And
yeah,
yeah, so one of the things we did as part of this, of course, is we asked all of the people that joined in the first episode some questions ahead of time. So, Jeremy, if you're happy to go ahead, we can dive straight into some questions, start
yeah.
providing some value to the people listening. Sound good?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it.
Excellent. Well, I'll let you answer the first one. So, how
Yeah,
hard is it to create high performing ad copy for both ads and outreach?
that's a great question. So starting off, it's not hard if you know what you're doing. So what I mean by that is a lot of people look at copywriting as very daunting, like, oh, what words do I come up with? And they feel like they have to figure everything out themselves. No, your customers can tell you what they want to hear. Your leads can tell you what they want to hear. This comes down really to some sort of basic audience research, right? Audience research is what are the pain points, what are the problems in my market, what are the solutions to those problems, what methods have they what solutions have they tried and it didn't work. And that's important because in your copy you want to say, hey, this is different from this solution you may have tried, uh, because we do this and this differently. So now they're like, oh, this is a NESB, this is new, easy, safe, and big for me. um, and when they're like, oh, this is new, easy, safe, and big, they're like, okay, uh, at least they're more open-minded to the idea, right? So there's definitely that you have to look at what have they tried and how that hasn't worked for them and how your solution is also different. Another thing is language. Oh, did you want to chime in?
No, I was just going to say that was very interesting. I mean, one of the experiences I had with making what I would say was my very first high performing ad copy for a
Uh-huh.
customer was the exact opposite experience of doing all of that. What
Uh-huh.
we decided to do, customer's decision, of course, customer's always right in some ways. But what we decided to do was to actually promote a negative story on their brand and their industry. And because it grew very viral within their space and their industry. And then what we did in the comments section, and of course using outreach, was showcase the solution to that. So high performing ad copy can be done in many ways, but I also agree with you. Advertising the pain point or making sure that you understand the pain points is extremely important to getting some high performing copy for sure.
Yeah, I like that. Exactly. I like that you brought that up because evidently high performing copy, you know that's high performing after what? You test it, after you see the data. And it varies from industry to industry, person to person, and such, right? One thing I want to add, kind of as like my last point to this, is the importance of word choice. Like, are you using the words that your market uses? But again, if you can combine all of this, but also look at your numbers, look at the data. And I like that you brought that up because it's like an open-minded approach as well, to approaching the marketing. So
Totally. I mean, I really like that you brought it up as well. I mean, one of the key things to understand, especially if you're in the B2B space, it's very common to use language like, let's just, as an example, I just worked on yesterday is GTM, right? And we had a meeting about the term GTM, which is go to market. Whether you spell it out and explain what that means, or whether you use the abbreviation. What we found from the data is spelling it out makes more sense. And oftentimes, especially when doing outreach, there's no such thing as a too simple message. Okay. Oftentimes we find with outreach, the simpler, the better. So one of the differences I make with ads is, of course, with an ad, you are trying to convert people straight away, ideally, right? Or at least bring them into the ecosystem, clicking to learn more. But we use outreach to begin conversations with people. And actually we find that sometimes a really simple question that's related to what you do can open the door to a huge world of working together, but potentially showcasing your expertise. So, for instance, one of the highest performing campaigns I've run on LinkedIn using outreach is, do you need more leads? It was really
simple question.
Immensely simple. And that opens the door to how we can potentially help them right on the platform we're asking. So that's just what I would do. But much like yourself, Jeremy, I totally agree with you. Data driven is the way to go. So test everything. And of course, that I imagine that comes with a budget, especially with ads. But that's just part of the process when looking to take on any form of marketing, because you do need to learn in your space for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's jump to the next question. So I think this kind of goes along the same, and I'm sure you can take this on with ads as well, Jeremy, but it's how do you personalize copy?
Yeah, fantastic question. So I'll start with the realm of ads, and then I'll kind of touch on organic, and then you can chime in as well with your thing. So firstly, when it comes to LinkedIn ads, you're obviously targeting a demographic, like maybe it's HR managers, CEOs, COOs, whatever it is. And when you are talking to this given demographic, there's certain their brain perks, or their mind at least perks up or pays attention to things that are relevant to them, right? So if your solution, whether it's a service or a product, is solving a problem of theirs, a personalized message to them is mentioning the problem definitely in the ad copy. So that's a good thing that's a good start when it comes to personalizing. Another thing I really like with personalizing, this is something we've tested with our ads, is storytelling, right? You'd be surprised the power of storytelling in ad copy. So it doesn't mean that you're saying their specific name, right, through an ad. Like, that's a little bit difficult. But you can actually write out a hypothetical scenario and say their job role. Like, okay, this person's the HR manager. Sally's the HR manager. Telling, it doesn't have to be super long, but telling a story there. And the ability for them to be like, wow, actually, that's relevant to me. That's relevant to me. And on top of that, you have maybe an engaging creative, or at least a creative that stands out with colors and everything.
Yeah.
You're definitely looking at personalized copy, because what they're seeing on LinkedIn is buy from us, buy from us, buy from us. But then they come across this different ad that's sponsored, like sponsored content, and it's telling a story first. And it's relatable. So that's a really great approach when it comes to personalizing copy when it comes to ads. And of course, look at your numbers and do your split test for sure. Try different
Yeah.
approaches. From the organic side of things, when it comes to personalizing organic messages for me, I like saying people's names for sure. Um, there's also schools of thought where it's good to uh, gather their data and then create a spreadsheet and then find just a personalized sentence for each person. You can add that as a personalized message in your
Totally.
software as you're reaching out. So I think that's a great approach as well. I found in my conversations, if I don't start out personalized, it's not the end of the world. But if my second message can be a little bit more personalized, or if they reply and then I reply to them, I could say, "Hey, we're both in the DC area, for example.
Right.
Oh, you like this sports team? I actually went to a game," type of deal. So, yeah.
Very nice. I mean, I really like your approach there. And just to chat about that really quickly, Jeremy, are you suggesting when you run those ads for the storytelling aspect, is
Mhm.
the storytelling approach speaking as if you're the person you're targeting? Is that what you
Um,
mentioned?
so it's telling a story. It's basically telling their story, but with a different name. So because you know
Yeah.
this demographics pain points pretty
Yeah.
well, you know you're like, okay, this is this is the journey that they go through. For example, let's take a
No,
company.
totally.
They're tired of working with agencies that don't work. They're like, okay, you need new customers, you work with this agency, or Sally works with this agency, she
Right.
this that and the third. And
Very
then
nice.
yeah,
No, I
exactly.
really like that. That's really, really good. Wow, what a nugget that was. I mean, honestly, I mean, that idea of having the prospect be walked through the process of working with yourself through a
Yeah.
story. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's really, really smart. I like that idea.
Yeah.
When it comes to personalizing copy, there's sort of three elements that I kind of like to look at this, and oftentimes that third option, by the way, is called creepy, which
Mm.
is sometimes what people want to do. And I'll explain that in just a moment. So for me, there's interest-based personalized copy where I know based on a group, based on an event, you're interested in a subject. Let's just
Mhm.
say SEO as an example, just for this idea. I know that you're interested in SEO, but you might already have an SEO solution. So I could outreach to you on the basis that I know you're interested, but I could ask you personally, how's it performing? Do you think it could be
Mm.
improved? One of the things that people try and do is assume that you're shopping. One of the things that happens with outreach, especially, is nobody is shopping on LinkedIn.
Mm.
Not for
Mhm.
my service, not for your service in any form. And what we found with outreach, especially, much like ads, is it has to feel like the prospect's idea to want to get in contact with you,
Well
right?
said.
So if I ask you a question on how it's performing and you let me in, you kind of open the door slightly. Well, now we can have a conversation about improving that, as an
Mhm.
example. The
Mhm.
second one is relevancy. So maybe you've made a piece of content, and there's tools out there that let you do this, where you can search someone's profile for keywords, and you know they've recently spoken about SEO and how they're looking to improve it going into 2025 or 2026, et
Yeah.
cetera, right? So
Mhm.
in that example, you can outreach them because you know they've made a piece of content or they've done something that tells you it's relevant. And of course, make sure you use that in the copy and ideally right at the start.
Mhm.
When was the last time, Jeremy, you actually got a message, someone actually speaking about a post you made? It's quite rare, right? So
Yeah, it's not
stand out
going.
tremendously.
Yeah.
And the third option is creepy. Now, this happens more often than not. It's like when someone says to you, "Hey, Jeremy, I saw you were at Walmart today buying eggs. Would you like to buy eggs?" Right? How many times have you seen it that way and gone, "No, I'm good"? It's just strange.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's ways of doing it. Even to be honest, even the process of saying, "Hey, I saw you visited my profile,"
Yeah.
even that approach is still a little bit strange to most people. So
Mhm.
have it feel more organic. So an idea behind that might be, well, I know the 1,500 people a week that view my profile right now. I know I can message them, but instead of me
Mhm.
messaging, "Hey, I saw you looked at my profile. I know you're interested," like
Yeah.
you just send them an engaging post. Take
Yeah.
your best post from the last month and
Mhm.
showcase it directly to that prospect, and just have it be a very generic message like, "Thought you might enjoy this piece of content, and here it is."
Nice. I
It's
like that.
very subtle, and it doesn't feel creepy in any way. But you'll be very surprised, Jeremy, how often most of my customers, especially, take
Yeah.
that option seeming a bit weird. And
That's yeah.
yeah, and
I
no
like
one
that.
wants to know. Yeah,
I
go
really
ahead.
like that. I really like that personalization approach because you're taking data LinkedIn is giving you about, hey, these are the people that visit your profile. These are people that are at least curious about what you do. And then you're not getting on their inbox saying, "Hey, you wanna buy? I see you visit my profile." You're saying, "Hey, I have some value for you. Like, take the advice. Like, take the approach." In fact,
Right?
the other week you like messaged me saying, "Hey, Jeremy, here's some profile optimization ideas for you." I'm like, "Thank you." you know, and
Right?
like and when it comes to marketing, especially if you know your market and like you're somewhat similar to your market, you can look at yourself like psychologically and say, okay, this is how I felt, and these are things I thought once I got this piece of value from this person. Like for me, I was like, oh, I felt appreciative, thankful,
Yeah,
and I was like, fellow authority figure just helped me out here, So
totally.
that's like where we have similarities as humans in that way, and you can kind of you could kind of think of a good idea of how people will feel and receive that information.
Totally. And I just wanted to say very quickly, if you have any questions, whether it comes to your ad copy, your outreach copy, or any questions for us directly, of course, feel free to ask them in the chat, but you can also scan the QR code below. But
Absolutely.
yeah, that's one of the things I would recommend, Jeremy, is, as I said, I mean, one of the things, just for a little insight there, is you most likely liked one of my pieces of content. When you do that on the LinkedIn platform, we run you through a funnel where it only showcases you value. So the idea is not your first video might have been on a profile adjustment. You will also find that you'll get plenty more going into the future. And that's kind of what we found works best, right? Is you get someone in and they've shown interest, they're impressed, and of course, we keep rolling you through even more stuff. And of course, the profile side of things is important to cover. But yeah, let's jump on to the next question. So whilst we're speaking about the profile, but let's just cover it now, right? So how to turn your LinkedIn profile into an authority building landing page. I
I think
really
you could
like
start
this
with this
one.
one. I'll
You
let
want me
you.
to
I'll let
start
you
this
start off
one?
with
Yeah.
this one. Yeah.
No problem. So LinkedIn has very much two different waves. I like to remind my customer of this all the time because whilst we do outreach, LinkedIn is where we find the prospects that we source, but we can also email them. And here's why that's important. LinkedIn's kind of had two bubbles in the last 2 decades, right? The first is where everybody was looking for jobs, right? And
Yeah.
ultimately looking to find at the next company. And now I truly do believe it's like Facebook of 2006 because we're not even at 1 billion users and literally only 1% of the platform post, right? So if you begin posting,
Wow.
you're already in that percentage, right? So it's
Yeah.
fantastic. So there's so much growth to be had here. And the more you kind of feed into that, the better. Now, because of those two waves, LinkedIn profiles have very much become a digital resume rather than a landing page. And one of the things that you speak about all the time, Jeremy, is speaking to that end consumer, right? I want to speak to the people I want to ultimately work with. And one of the things that we do with building authority, whether that be subtle changes like changing your custom pronoun or adding your reviews to your profile, which in my industry, and I know for yours as well, showcasing your reviews where people judge you based on what you offer, such as lead generation people, they oftentimes struggle to get into people's networks on LinkedIn because you know what you're going to get when you add them. You know, by adding me, I'm probably going to ask you if you need some help. That's just the way it is in this space. So by showcasing your great reviews from customers that allow you to do so on LinkedIn, it massively promotes and helps people accept you. Of course, it helps build your authority when you showcase good reviews. And you can do that by adding the view services button on LinkedIn when you're a premium member. But yeah, really, I'll let you jump into this because there's a couple of things I want to jump into on the featured side, especially when it comes to the content we feature. But feel free to take that away and on some of the subtle changes you do.
Yeah, for sure. So, firstly, I do view the LinkedIn profile as a landing page for sure. How I approach it is think of it as both you talking about yourself, but not too much. What I mean by that is your mindset should be, who am I in relation to my buyer avatar? How do I help them? So if you have that mindset, your language in your description, for example, in your near your name, for example, in your skills, for example, that's listed, are all around. This is all of this serves my ideal avatar in their understanding of me a lot more, right? So that's one part. The second part is reviews. Reviews are definitely important. And I'd also say content as well. Because like you said, only 1%, nobody's posting. Like you may think people are posting a lot, they're not posting a lot. And in fact, if we take the 1% that's posting, there's still a hierarchy in terms of quality and the amount of people that actually get good engagement and good results from it, right? There's basically any system you see in life. There's a pyramid hierarchy. Top 1% of that 1%, for example.
Yep.
So like even when you post content, and let's say you're refining your content, this is so important because you're adding value, you're showing your authority, and when they get on your profile, um, you the content is a large part of the profile's authority piece. Um,
Totally.
and then not to mention, let's say you have people that like awesome people that have endorsed you as well. Um, Another thing is if you ever share about things that are non even industry related. For instance, what was it? A few months ago, I had a speaking engagement for a summer camp of this affordable homes and community company. And it was great. It was a fun speaking engagement. I did like a 40-minute presentation on my career and everything. And the kids really enjoyed it. And I just shared that on LinkedIn because I am kind of showing, I'm not just showcasing myself as a service provider, I'm showcasing Jeremy. Like, what is Jeremy's life like? I think I could do that more actually on my profile. That's kind of something I'm looking forward to doing more going into this new year. But there's great like talented professionals that do that and they do a great job of that, and you see the human side. And at the end of the day, yes, we're in the B2B space, or maybe you're in the B2C space watching this, but the communication is always human to human at the end of the day. So that's a
No,
huge thing to
absolutely.
remember.
I mean, just to jump into that, Jeremy, I imagine you might even refresh potentially some of your customers' profiles. But something I was going to say to you is to full circle this moment
Yeah.
is, and this typically only works when you have a more niche target audience. Okay,
Yes.
so what I would highly recommend that you do is, especially in the about section and even the tagline section, and most importantly, the featured posts that you can showcase, is tell a story, right? If you know that you only work with consultants, well, turn your entire profile to speak about how you help or how you've helped consultants, right? So instead of the about section being, I was born in London, I grew up in Vegas, when I was 14,
Yeah.
I moved to Spain, truly nobody cares, right?
Yeah.
Truly nobody cares. Like,
Yeah.
and they especially don't care these days about university degrees, work experience, your first job, right? All of these things build that human interaction, but that's where the content I see fits, right? One of my best performing posts ever was about my first job. I actually started by cleaning limos, and I actually got my first social media role from getting a customer through that, which was a very fun way to enter the industry, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, what I'd recommend is actually telling a story throughout your page. So the further you scroll down, the more in depth you get, right? So start it being very subtle. The cover image should be a couple of lines, right? How you help X do what, right?
Yeah.
So take that concept and then especially with the featured pieces of content, that's where you can get most of what you do across. So if I was to help consultants, I might have my landing page featured post be, how I help consultants. Click the image as an example, and you can view my profile and see that exactly. And then the next post that's featured next to it might be a case study of how you helped a consultant achieve X.
Yeah.
Right. So not only are you who you work with, you're showcasing one of your best case studies at the exact same moment. These sorts of approaches is where I find that the authority building side help dramatically. On top of that, actually, being a public speaker on the platform is one of the higher options of, how do you build authority in your space? Well, being a public speaker is one of those, right? And that's why we do these events. You can build these events to grow within your industry, and there's a lot of secrets and tips behind why they work so well. but we've found that across the board that these are some of the best things you can do to get your name out there and just become known in your space.
Yeah, for sure. I really love what you said about the case study thing in the featured links on a LinkedIn profile. 100%, 100%. That's one of the questions people think about. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeremy, let's jump to the next question here.
Yeah.
And this one appears to be just for you. So
yeah.
feel free to take it away.
For sure, for sure. So when it comes to LinkedIn ads budget, firstly, you want to change your mindset slightly when it comes to LinkedIn compared to a lot of other social media platforms, right? So LinkedIn overall is more pricier than Facebook, TikTok, Google, etc. The reason being is because firstly, you have a smaller user base, as James touched on earlier in the call. It hasn't even reached 1 billion yet. So because of that, you're competing with other advertisers for that smaller pool of people compared to the other platforms. That's one. Secondly, these are people are willing to spend more on this platform because the customers are willing to spend more on average if we compare it to the other platforms. So if you do the math, you can figure out that typically you're probably gonna want to have a bigger budget for LinkedIn. Before I get into the question though, another thing to factor in is timeline. So the biggest mistake I see I've seen my clients do in the past before they work with us, and also people that aren't my clients that I just talked to, is that they come up with an ad budget. Maybe they Googled it, or maybe they just came up with it, and then they say, "Okay, I'm going to test this out for a month." That's a mistake, because if you're only testing for a month, there's so many variables at play that the likelihood of you succeeding in your first, second, third approach, and even success has its gradations, is low. So you want to think of it from at least a 3-month timeline to a 6-month timeline when it comes to advertising. And I say this to people, like I would say this to a friend. I wouldn't even say, like as a friend, like, okay, not even working with me, just advice. So your mindset needs to be a little bit longer term. So when it comes to the budget, on average, you want to have the mindset of spending between $2,000 to $5,000 per month on LinkedIn. You start off with that because it gives you more wiggle room to test different creatives, different LinkedIn type ad types. There's sponsored ad, there's message ads as well. There's spotlight ads, all these ads. I personally would recommend to sticking to mainly timeline ads, mainly regular sponsored ads, whether it's video or photo, and then using messages as a follow-up tool afterward. But that's a different conversation. So I would have the mindset of about 2,000 to 5,000 starting out, and then from there, as you're targeting these various interests, or maybe you have a customer list already and you want to target them or make a lookalike audience from them, I would look at my numbers. I'd look at my cost per click, right? CPM as well, 1,000 impressions about. Like, look at that, and then eventually, this is why you have to give it time, because then you'll start to understand what it costs to get a lead, because they'll tell you, and they'll tell you what it costs to get a client. Essentially, these are critical metrics to know whether you're running ads or you're doing organic. Absolutely. So once I know, like, let's say it's month 3, and I know it costs, let's say my cost per lead is $60. Every time I spend $60, I get a lead. Okay, and then let's say my cost per acquisition customer is $120, so about double that, right? Well, now I know, okay, if I want X amount of clients, this is how much I should spend going forward, right? I have a more narrowed approach. At the start, Jeremy told me this range of $2,000 to $5,000 per month, but now I have like a tailored approach for my company / industry that I know is predictable. And then I can also look at other things like my sales process, right, to refine that so that my cost per customer becomes lower, essentially, because you want to get that as low as possible. Mm-hmm. So that's how you want to approach LinkedIn. It's pricier than other ad platforms because there's less people on it, but also the customers are willing to spend more. Another thing is that this is perfectly fine if your customer lifetime value is pretty good, right? Like, for instance, if even spent $1,000 to get a customer, if their lifetime value for my business is $10,000, I would take that trade, you know?
Totally.
So people's reluctance to spend on ads just comes down to their confidence in, okay, will this give me a return or not? If I know it'll give me a return, then I'm willing to spend more. But again,
Yeah.
you have to definitely have that timeline of like 3 months. Now, don't have that 1 month mentality. That's going to
Yeah.
get you in trouble.
Totally.
You're going to waste money.
Yeah.
Long-term mentality. If you're not ready for LinkedIn ads, perfect. In this podcast, we're talking about organic as well.
Yeah.
Um, so that's like a big thing when it comes
For
to how
sure.
to set an ad budget. Yeah.
No, totally, totally. I mean, on that side of things, you probably definitely scared some people away from ads by saying, 60 to 120, but it's true. That is
Yeah.
realistic. I mean, I have a customer right now who came to me because of his lead cost being $56.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
couldn't believe it compared to
Yeah.
the alternatives. One of the reasons why I don't charge on a monthly basis is because what we put in place does not work within 1 month.
Mhm.
Truthfully, it's why we don't.
Yeah.
That's why we don't take on customers monthly. And I'd
Yeah.
also argue in this day and age, what marketing works within 30 days. Right? It's very difficult to,
Yeah.
as I get the idea behind it being, very easy to try. You've got 30 days, but realistically, most of the customers I work with don't even close people within 30 days.
Yeah. Also, I want to
So,
add this, just from like the perspective of the agency you work with, as an agency owner myself. A lot of times, customers come to agencies with this magic wand mindset. The truth is, if you don't even have your buyer avatar figured out, you don't really have content yet, you don't really have a ad budget in mind. Well, we have more work to do here, right? So if we're okay, first I said 3 months, but we have to figure some things out first, right? That's why we send an onboarding form with questions, almost grilling like questions, like, okay, what's the answer to this? What do you have for this? What do you have for this? And it's okay if you don't know all of that. That's why we have our onboarding calls too, so that we can figure it out together. And then that way the campaign goes as smoothly as possible with that information.
no, totally. I mean, and just to touch on that whilst we're still speaking, just so you know, if anyone wants to work with Jeremy directly or even ourselves and perhaps that whole collaboration, feel free to
Yeah.
scan that code on screen and you can, of course, book a call with us. But to
Yeah.
touch on that, Jeremy, with your experience with LinkedIn ads, one of the things that we do to help customers make it more cost effective is
Mhm.
actually providing them an audience. And this is what we can, of course, help our customers together. And I know we've spoken about doing this plenty of times.
Yeah.
But one of the things we do with the customers that run ads in-house, or we work with their ad person in-house, is we provide them a list of people that have already shown interest on LinkedIn in your subject matter, and then you run an ad to those people. Now, why is that more beneficial? Well, as an example, if I have a LinkedIn event on the platform that speaks about LinkedIn outreach or LinkedIn ads, as an example, I can go out and join my entire industry's events on the platform. I can find my target audience within them. Let's say I'm looking for founders or CEOs. I take a list of those. I can get their email from about 40% of them and their profiles because they're public, and I can run an ad directly to them. Do you find that those sort of approaches work best compared to having LinkedIn kind of learn it for you? Because back in the days of Facebook, we used to say 3 months used to take just the platform to learn who you're looking for, right?
Mhm.
So it just takes some time and some money to have the platforms figure it out. What
Yeah.
happens if you tell the platforms who you're looking for?
So when it comes to your approach of finding people that already show interest, that absolutely is a great idea. Anytime you can shorten the timeline of a platform learning who your audience is, you're giving yourself a huge advantage.
Tell them.
Because what is the platform doing when it's figuring out who your audience is? It's spending your money. And if you can do some due diligence beforehand and say, okay, I see these events here. These are people I want to target. I know James. He can collect all this data for me. I have a spreadsheet, and I can upload it, target them specifically, make a lookalike audience from these people.
Exactly.
Especially if you target them, it's a lot more cost effective. And then from
Yeah.
there, maybe you can go into LinkedIn instead with $1,000 actually per month, or maybe just $2,000 per month. Right, your range maybe even shortens because the level of opt-in and cheaper leads you get based on that previous due diligence um is a lot better. So
Totally.
absolutely great point.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason we suggest running that, and truly for anyone that wants to test that method, something to be aware of, it really depends on the source in which you get the prospects from. So make sure you segment that stuff dramatically. So if you don't just have an audience that's 2,000 people of emails from groups, you actually want to break that down to individual groups. That way, you know that when an ad is resonating better than the others, you can immediately say, it's this group, this is the one I need to focus on. How do I get more people from here? If you don't know the source, it gets difficult.
Yeah, I have a quick question for you with that. How do you choose between high quality groups and not so high quality groups when collecting that data?
Yeah, great point. So really, you're going to want to spend some time in the group. Now, the reason I say that, and that is immensely manual and very boring, right? So what I do when I'm joining a group is I actually set the bell alert in that group for a few days. And the idea behind that is if I start to get annoyed by that group and the notifications, well, guess what? You're onto an active group, which is the first thing you need to make sure that it's the case, right? So once you know the group's active, well, what's the point if it's active for people that do what I do? Well, that doesn't make sense to me to market to. We have to dive in, and we have to use Sales Navigator to dissect who in this audience is actually part of the people I might work with. And then once you kind of know, okay, it's active, it's new, it's people posting all the time. Oh, I found my own audience. That is where I would draw the line behind, of course, looking to scrape it and of course run ads to it or run outreach to it, either or.
Nice.
The flip side to that is what we found is actually private groups on the platform. They're tremendously difficult to get in, and oftentimes you have to know somebody to get in. These are a goldmine. If you have a unique way of getting in, well, with one of my customers, we helped raise $3.1 million from a doctor's group because we were able to get invited in. Okay, so there's tremendous power in being inside some of these private groups. But yeah, they are very difficult to get in, but that's really where we find the best prospects because they're typically the most targeted and there's not so many people. But really, if you try and go for, let's say, the digital marketing group on LinkedIn, which is the number one, I think it's got 278,000 people. Well, you can imagine how many times the owners of businesses have been pitched inside that group. Take a group where you've got 200 members, very few. Right, so you stand out dramatically. You take an approach that speaks with them, using the storytelling, using the personalization that we've spoken about. That's where we see our best results. A little tip there, Jeremy, as well, and this is something we'll probably do down the road, is building your own private group. Once you've accumulated an audience of people from groups that like them, well, guess what? You should make your own. And then the best part about that is you can self-promote within your own group. Obviously, you can't really do that within other groups. So we'll jump to the next question here in just a moment. But just to touch on that as well, a little freebie gift that we do as part of that, and this helps even more, Jeremy, with the segmenting of people, is actually creating a poll within a group. These typically go really viral really quickly because you're doing everything LinkedIn wants you to do. You're joining a network-based group that has an interest. You're creating a piece of content that engages people around that same subject. And more importantly, you can run outreach, ads, and messages directly to people that respond positively. That's a real secret in how you decide what group's best for you. An example for you, Jeremy, in your case, you could join a LinkedIn ads based group and you could write within there who's running ads under $1,000, let's just say. And maybe
as a poll.
Right? And then you would want, in that case, you would actually write to the people that respond negatively because you want people that are responding higher. The idea behind this is it has to be a creative way of getting people attention without self-promotion. And they're really tough to kind of find that line between how you can help them. Another example would be, are you running retargeting ads with your LinkedIn ads campaign as an example?
Super important.
Right? Super, super important. I know how much you speak about those. Now, if they're not, you just open the door to tell them about how much time you can save them, but value you can save them, and how much more effective their campaigns will be when they retarget people consistently, right? So these sorts of approaches is where I think you'll find, even in your own stuff, in my own stuff, I do a poll a week and a new group every week. to source a better group. So we're doing this actively. We do it for customers as well. And that's where we find a lot of our people. But the real end goal is own your own group. That way people find you for what you do. That's the real secret behind LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's jump to the next question. So how do you best communicate what you do on LinkedIn? I'll let you go first for this one.
Yeah. How to best communicate what you do on LinkedIn? Well, there's a lot of ways to answer this one. Yeah. Okay. So when you communicate what you best do on LinkedIn, I start with simplicity. Like I don't get too industry jargon like with things. I talk like how I would talk to a friend, because, like for instance, I know agency owners, and we talk a certain way. We have a certain language to how we talk. We make abbreviations. We have industry jargon, things like that. Same thing with any industry. There's like internal industry jargon. That does not mean that the customers know what you're talking about. So you have to almost have the mindset of, I'm going to explain it like I'm 5. So the best way to communicate starting off is with simplicity. So if you're communicating a story through a post, keep it simple. If you're communicating a case study on a post, keep it simple. If you're doing a call to action post, keep it simple. Even on video, if you're doing a video post, whether it's ads or organic, keep it simple, right? When I post shorts on LinkedIn every now and again, I keep it as simple as possible. Another element to communicating well is a degree of engagement and engaging tonality, at least engaging posts. You could talk about graphics, video graphics, things like that capture the eye. Because the truth is, and I talked to a client about this like about 2 weeks ago. When someone is scrolling on LinkedIn, they're just like scrolling, and their eyes or their finger stops on things that look interesting. So if your post is interesting but it looks bland, or there isn't something different about it, they're just going to go right past it. So you have to have scroll stoppers to a degree. This can be colors. This could be capital letters. I've seen that has stopped me from scrolling at times. All these things that are interesting. I've even seen data to be scroll stoppers. What I mean by that is people will make an infographic, and it'll be a simple infographic. It'll be interesting information, and it'll be eye-catching, like the numbers pop out a lot. So that's a huge thing. Another thing when it comes to your profile is, and I don't want to steal James's thunder, so I'll let him touch more on that, but it's emojis as well. People scrolling through your profile, there's a lot going on in a given LinkedIn profile, especially if you're someone that's optimized it very well. You have a lot of things there. So if you want to guide people's eyes to a certain thing more, you can utilize emojis to make that part stand out a little bit more. So that's what I'll say about communicating on LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many layers to this, how to best communicate what you do. And I think ultimately it actually depends on what you do, right? Really, because certain industries do things certain ways. And one of the major mistakes I've seen with many LinkedIn profiles is they turn their personal profile into their company. So you go to their about section and it's just about their company and what the company does. And one of the huge hiccups I've seen with doing outreach in many forms and even content is LinkedIn's a people platform first. So you just have to tell people what you do as a person, right? And that's professional, but I also like telling people to add something personal in there. So I worked with a customer who was an investment banker, but also a mountain biker. Well, tell people, because it makes you completely unique from the rest of the boring investment bank-based profiles that are out there. There's nothing unique about that. Truly, there is not. And if in any way you can be memorable, have it be for something unique. And then, so really, how do you best communicate? One of the things you touch on there is I start with my name. Wherever my name goes, I want to tell people what I do. Right. And one of the things you can do on LinkedIn, which I know you've just recently done, but you can change your custom pronoun on LinkedIn to be your job title. And this means wherever you make a comment, whenever you make a post, whenever you send a message, you now no longer have to tell them what you do. Because in my case, it will immediately say you're a LinkedIn growth expert, as an example, right? Which for me kind of covers the board with what I do. As you mentioned, I also have an emoji in my name. The reason for that is most people don't. Stand out, do something a little bit different. There's nothing better than a big yellow, icon next to someone's name when you've made a post to make someone go, "What? How's he done that?" Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea there. But most importantly, I feel it's communicating what you do, but I like to do that in results sense. So either if your product or service can immediately explain what you do very, very easily, then allow it to do that, right? So my thoughts there are, an example, one of my current pinned featured posts on my profile is my course. Well, because a course sells itself. If you're interested in learning more about what's possible on LinkedIn, you know what a course can do. And when it's that simple, you can, of course, have it there. It's understandable. So you might see James Mason, LinkedIn growth expert. Of course, he has a course, right?
Yeah.
You get it. Now, the downside to that is, in my current profile, is I'm not showcasing my service. And we're actually doing that for a very specific reason. Because we have building a very large audience from our events, we want to direct that traffic to something that's a bit more manageable and ultimately doesn't have a ceiling. Now, what we do is we've built our outreach tactics to such a strength that we now know we can convert people from messaging. So we just message the people we feel we want to work with. And that's working best for me. So I communicate a lot of what I do by content, but also by messaging where it's private. I much prefer that approach personally, and it comes across a lot more exclusive to the end prospect as well. So that's just what I'm doing currently and what I'm finding working better.
That's fantastic. I want to, that's very fantastic. I cut myself off because I want to get this next point out is I want everyone watching this right now to notice the systematic approaches we have. Like we almost have a psychological element to why we do the things that we do. When we're doing ads, we have a reason why we're doing it. When we're doing organic, we have a reason why we're doing every single thing. We're not just throwing things up. We test things as well. And when you have this mindset, I'm testing it, I'm seeing what's going to happen, and I'm going to make decisions from that. That's where the patience comes about, because you kind of appreciate those small wins, and then, whoa, you just got a lead. Whoa, you just got a client from this approach. But it came from the systematic approach that you did previously. And sometimes you don't see the results until and James, I'm sure you know this, you don't see the results until 30 days later, 60 days later, maybe 90 days later. But it's happening. It's just a compound effect, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I'd add to that for sure, right, is one of the things we see time and time again is we send one message, right?
Yeah.
And it works. And it works really well and really quickly. And now the customer wants to remove all of the funnel beforehand and just immediately go for that message. Well, hold up. They've gone through a journey, right? So the whole process of that journey, which can be over many weeks, with sharing content, sharing extra value, asking questions, right? All these things that you can do. It's a journey. The same with an ad funnel, right? The retargeting funnel, the fifth ad you choose to show someone after they've seen the first one might be the one that converts best, but it's because they've seen the 4 others before. Right. And very much you're fully corrected. It is a system, but oftentimes you have to keep in mind that a lot of the things that you do actually result in providing value ahead of time, but also an example to this, I'll cut myself off, is the newsletter approach, right? That's recent on LinkedIn. Fantastic value, but you have to provide value. So one of the things a customer recently did is they made 10 newsletter posts, all of value, no call to action in any form, just trying to impact the platform with some value. Their 11th post, they did a call to action and were blown away that they got 11 calls and like 2 sales, right?
Wow. Yeah.
I explained to them, well, granted, that's a great result, but it's from the 10 pieces of value. And what they did, and this is in my opinion, was a mistake. Their 12th, 13th, and 14th newsletter post didn't perform as well. Do you know why? Because they tried to emulate what they did in number 11, which is just go to action. That's not how the platform works. Is you warm people up through value, and then you drive them to something that might be of interest to them.
Exactly.
So that's kind of where we spend a lot of time. But yeah, there's a system of value on LinkedIn that everybody has to go through. And typically we find that, 8 to 10 touch points is where you find someone going from cold to buying. Now, as many touch points as you can bring in, whether that's ads running to people, that's messages running to people, that's content playing a part, there's many levels to making that. But the more you do, the quicker they go through that process. But just because you have a ad convert doesn't mean you stop doing your outreach, right?
Exactly.
Because that's the reason why it's all assisting each other. Anyway, the last question. Actually, no, we have two more questions, Jeremy. So the second to last one is, how effective are LinkedIn lead gen forms?
Yes, good question. So firstly, its effectiveness depends on how you utilize it. So I'll start with an ads standpoint. So firstly, with lead gen forms, you want to have critical information checked off and displaying so that they can enter that information. Obviously, first name, last name, email address, phone number. I'd even say also company name as well, because if you or your sales reps need to follow up months later, hey, at least know the company name. You don't have to go on Google or whatever, or ChatGPT if you have to find them.
Yeah.
So that information too, maybe industry as well if you want. That's kind of more optional, but those are the main things you definitely want to have on your lead gen form. And then from there, it's a simple approach to, like, when you're running ads. Let's say you're targeting a B2B clients. That's the call to action is to fill out that form. It pops up on LinkedIn, natively on LinkedIn. They enter that information. Typically with forms, you don't want to add too many fields. The reason being is typically the more fields you add is the more friction you're adding to the marketing process. So the sweet spot is to have the critical fields you need, and then basically that. Another thing with ads is that you don't want to just stop after you get you don't just want to have the mindset of, okay, they're going to complete this form and then they'll reach out to me or I'll just reach out to them. No. What you want to do with ads is say, enter your information, and then afterwards, thank you, you're almost done. Go to this page to schedule a call with us. It can save you time when it comes to follow-up, because people just... Also, secondly, the person's mindset is kind of in a okay, I kind of want to solve this problem mindset. The biggest problems people face is that they don't follow up with leads until 2 days later. By that point, that's a long time. So you want to speed up that follow-up. So if they're already in a mindset of I'm interested, they're probably going to be in a mindset of let me schedule a call. Now, if they don't schedule a call, perfect. You have their information, you have their data in your CRM or your system or wherever you store their information. You could reach out. Maybe you create automations where, hey, when a lead comes in, they get certain things guiding them to schedule a call again, right?
Totally.
Or some sort of system like that, right? So when it comes to ads, that's the mindset. Don't just make lead forms that end all be all. If you're thinking from, okay, there's so many variables in the buying process that could distract someone, et cetera, let me make sure they continue on with scheduling a call with me. And then if they don't, I'm going to follow up for them to schedule a call. And then also, if you're retargeting, perfect. You have data, you can retarget people accordingly. When it comes to organic, I'll let James talk about this side of things, but they can be really effective as well, especially when you're having people request services from you. You could utilize forms for that. There's a feature on LinkedIn for that, and they can enter their information. Maybe they can check off the service they need based on what you've inputted. And it's a great way to get leads, especially if you're getting a lot of traffic or attention through your various mechanisms. You're really golden with that approach of that form.
Absolutely. I mean, just to add to that, Jeremy, one of the things I would suggest there is you're fully correct. The amount of sort of required information you need from a form can dramatically affect the form. Obviously, as a business yourself, you want to get as much as possible. But in reality, typically a prospect that doesn't trust you at this point, that's just seen an ad or just seen a piece of content, they don't want to give over their phone number. I wouldn't personally, right? So just make sure you experiment with what's required. Have them be optional. Some people I've learned in business are talkers. Some people prefer to do things by email. Some people prefer to read your entire website, all your documentation, and then speak to you for 5 minutes and pay you, right? Those are the best. the last ones are the best people on the earth, right? But ultimately, with the effectiveness, truly, as Jeremy mentioned, on my own profile, we've been running now for the last 2 months the request services button on the platform. We have about 3 people a day fill that in that are decent quality. Typically, one of them may be outside of our target audience, and the majority of them, which is very interesting for me, is actually based on consultancy. So I've actually booked 6 consultancy calls, paying customers this week from LinkedIn. Right, so that's people seeing something of value out there on the platform, whether it be a message, whether that be a piece of content, whether it be an event, and they've wanted to speak with me more about how LinkedIn could benefit their business. So very effective in that sense. The difference with why Jeremy's approach might be different is the form they're filling in is about exactly what you're advertising. Where with the profile and the organic approach, I can't tell initially where they've come from, whether they've seen my messaging sequencing, whether they've seen a piece of content, whether they've seen a post within a group, right? There's all these different types of content that are created. Could be a newsletter as well, right? It's still possible to click it. So there's many avenues that they can kind of come from, and you don't actually know what they've seen when they're claiming to hear more from you. But if you do a lot of stuff where it's value based, oftentimes the prospect will say, hey, I saw this about that, and I want to learn more about how I can do this on LinkedIn.
Could you remind me, I believe on the request services form, is there a section where you can add, like, how did you find me or something along those lines?
There is. It's more of like a notes, like a comment.
Gotcha.
Where you can kind of fill in something custom. What I always do, Jeremy, is when my actual reply to those request forms, it says send a proposal. You're not actually able to attach anything on LinkedIn. So what I use it for is to book calls. So obviously, you can reply back to them, let them know, hey, thanks. And then what I do, Jeremy, is I just ask them that question on the call itself. Hey, what are you looking to learn? I actually have an additional form for people that want to purchase consultancy. Of course, it's part of the process. So if they purchase that, we ask them, what is it you're looking to learn? And of course, we make sure we're up to scratch with everything like that. So, but ultimately, there's many, many avenues there. The only downside to running it on your platform is you don't know what they've seen. Where if you want to be hyper specific about a certain product or service, run an ad because you know that form's only being filled in for that specific reason. You can't do that on the organic side, right? So, and oftentimes, and I will, for full transparency, you can book calls with people that want to ask you a question that is not related to selling a service as well. So you do have to have a process ahead of time to make sure you're not just just looking for ideas, because we can't all do that, right? But whilst we're on the idea of call booking, let me just pull this up. Feel free to scan that code. We've been doing this throughout the whole process. If you want to speak with us directly on how we can help you further, feel free to scan that code. It will be at the end of this, which will be in just a moment. It will be up for a couple of minutes at the end as well. So, let's jump down to the last question, Jeremy. Are you ready for this one? Say the best one, right? How do you increase my LinkedIn engagement? I get this question all the time, Jeremy. Literally all the time. And I often like to, and this, and I know what causes it. It's quite funny, actually. I'm sure you've dealt with this in some way in your own industry, but you get, currently there's this big sort of industry wave of people telling you to make content for the people you want to work with, right? So if I work with consultants, I change all of my approach to only specifically speak to consultants, right? And that's what I'm meant to do. Your content, your posts, your messaging, everything should be directed to who you're looking for. And in the end of the day, you'll actually find that most consultants in this example don't care about a recent LinkedIn update, right? So depending on the content you're looking to make, you need to keep in mind who might engage. Now, oftentimes, the things that are valuable to people when they follow me, where they get to see the latest updates of LinkedIn or recent changes or things that help you get leads or customers, the consultant's busy running their business. So whilst I agree that you do need to speak to those people, I also don't expect them necessarily to engage, at least not be number one. Now, what I've done, and this is what a lot of my customers do as well, is you often look at influencers on the platform or people that are appearing to do very well, that are very popular from content, right? And what
Absolutely.
you will find, I encourage you to do this later, Jeremy, for yourself as well. Take your biggest competitor, take your biggest influencer in your industry, and actually spend 20 minutes looking into who's engaging with their content. What you'll find is it's other people that do what you do, and it's not the
Mm,
audience you're looking for. The
mhm,
audience that you're looking for is actually like the cherries on top of a cake,
mhm.
right? So what you might want to consider is instead of making content for your audience and how you can help them, you can just become an authority in your space. And that speaks to those people when they're interested in working with you. Now,
Yep.
the reason I say it that way is because then you can target the people that do like that content that is going viral.
Yep.
Oftentimes, the stuff going viral is not what my end prospects want to read, right? So the
Exactly.
idea is I fill my audience with people that love that content, that love to engage with it, but they're not going to buy from me. But that's okay, because when I make a post and 25 people or 100 people like it, well, that helps all those new people. It's just social proof backing me up
Exactly.
to my authority, right? So
Yep.
and then what I do is every month I take my best post from the previous month and I just send it to people, right?
Mm,
So the one that resonated best with most people gets sent. So one of the things you mentioned earlier, Jeremy, is the profile optimization message that you received. That was my
mm.
most popular post from last month. That's why
Awesome.
you received it, right? So
Yeah.
the idea behind that is you can get more engagement by sending people a post, of course, right? You get more eyeballs on it. But really, you want to focus on who's in your audience and who's engaging, because it's very rare that the actual people I'm working with even like my content.
Yep.
Just to touch on that as well, Jeremy, I'm not sure if you have experienced this, but as well, one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of my customers don't actually want people to know I'm helping them, right? Which is why I only have 8 reviews on LinkedIn, which is insane, given my
Yeah.
other platforms have hundreds, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of funny that I've really had some resistance in getting people to leave reviews, want to publicly share that they're getting help with their
Yeah.
LinkedIn. It's kind of
Yeah.
ironic, right? But that's just the space we're in.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it just comes down to, you know, expertise type of an expertise conversation. Like people want to seem like they like the idea of like, yeah, I figured this out, but that's a different conversation. What you said is absolutely spot on. The idea of compartmentalizing engagement from customers, because engagement is not is, an engaged person is not a customer per se. It can be, not per se. Um, so you want to do exactly that, create engaging posts with the mindset of engagement. And you can look at competitors, you can look at people that are popular in the space, but don't just look at their posts at surface level, like, oh, they talked about a mistake they made over the weekend and how that relates to business. Look at the structure behind it, right? Kind of going back to storytelling, look at like how do they start off the post? And this is a copywriting kind of topic here. How do they start off the post? How do they get your attention at the start? Um, how did they talk about how did they tease the ending of it, or what problem did they run into in the middle of the post, and then how did the post conclude? So when you look at the structure of that, you're like, okay, I see why this got thousands of likes, thousands of, and a bunch of comments as well, right? um so that's the thing there, kind of like modeling success. Another thing from the ad side of things is you can run brand awareness campaigns to get more engagement. And this type of ad is specifically for likes and comments and things like that, right? Optimizing for those types of people. And then, like James said, when you are talking to a customer or when you're sharing your most popular posts, they see all this social proof. They don't know you, but in psychology, it's called heuristics. It's our mental shortcuts for things, how we categorize things. If someone reaches out to me, I don't know them, I don't really have trust yet, but they share a valuable post with me that I like, and then also I see all these likes and comments, my brain uses a shortcut of this person's probably pretty effective, right? Because people know him. Also, this is very valuable for me. So now, when we talked about, like previously, we talked about how to stand out on LinkedIn like that. That's standing out on LinkedIn for sure. Because if I'm scrolling my inbox, I'm talking to this person, and then next to him is like some random guy from Idaho saying, "Hey, do you want SEO for your agency, or do you want SEO for? No reply, right? Because the first person adds more value to me, and that's
Yeah.
that's the mindset of clients on LinkedIn. It's who adds value to me, both from a services standpoint, sure, but also from a post standpoint. Hey, I look forward to this post. There's
No, absolutely.
people on LinkedIn I haven't worked with, but I look for their posts, and I'm actually um one of the people that engages, and that adds to their brand a lot, right? So from
No,
an ad
absolutely.
standpoint, brand awareness campaigns, from an organic standpoint, model success, and put that out there consistently too. Don't just post once
No,
and
for
then or
sure.
twice and make it
Of, of,
consistent, refine it,
of course,
etc.
right? Yeah, like totally. I
Yeah.
mean, on the side of like increasing engagement, I always like to, and I get, as I said, as part of the service that we provide, we focus solely on getting leads and customers. That is really the focus of LinkedIn. But
Yep.
we also get asked, can we improve, of course, can we assist any other growth, company
Yeah.
page growth, engagement growth? Yes, is the answer. But in reality, what we like to say and do is actually, as I mentioned, if you're a target audience is CEOs, well,
Mhm.
dissect the CEOs within your current audience. Go to your network on LinkedIn, click the first button, and it will show you all of the people that you're connected with. In the search bar, type in whatever job title you're looking to work with, CEOs in this example, and they will all appear in front of you. Now take a piece of content that you've made for them and send it to them. Because it doesn't matter if you get 8 likes or 18 likes, if you can put that piece of content right in front of the people that you want to see it, it will resonate. So it doesn't matter if the algorithms pushed it, whether any of these factors, if you've written a piece of content for someone, it's worthy. An example to that would be a book, right? If I wrote an actual real life physical book, it
Mm.
doesn't matter if it had 10 likes on LinkedIn. If it's valuable to you and you're the end prospect and you read it and you get value, what does it matter, the
Exactly.
social media,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
especially in some cases, there's only so far that LinkedIn organic outreach experts or LinkedIn ads experts can grow to, right?
Yep.
Because you're not going to reveal the strategies of what you do because people will just emulate. And that's
Yep.
just how the process works here on LinkedIn. But it's super interesting. But I do always ask customers, why are you growing engagement? Because if you had 100 likes a post and you had no customers coming in on leads,
Yeah.
is it a waste of time? Is it a waste of money? What's the end goal, right? So
Yeah. Exactly.
it's just one of those, isn't it, on LinkedIn? But it can help. It's not the deciding factor, in my opinion. And
Yeah. For
oftentimes,
sure.
from what I've seen as well, is the small creators that niche down typically
Yep.
do a lot better than bigger
Mhm.
brands that are sort of keeping things a bit more open.
Mm.
And I have no doubt that the engagement is low in a small creator as well, right? If
Yeah.
you look at
Yeah.
any of the top,
Exactly.
they're speaking to the problem, and more importantly, they're sharing it with the problem. So, I think that idea, Jeremy, is that strategy that I mentioned there about sharing a post. Write a post for founders, as an example. Share your best ad strategy that you've your best case study where you've
Mhm.
worked with another founder, brings in that storytelling element that you mentioned earlier about what
Yep.
it's like to work with you and what can happen. And then you can send 800 messages this month to your audience that are founders. If,
Mhm.
if your post isn't getting 800 impressions, it's worth doing, right?
Yeah.
So more importantly, you
Very
know the
specific.
eyeballs that they're getting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
where we find a lot of stuff works well. We do a combination of generic stuff like the profile optimization that can kind of appeal to everybody, but really we find our best success when you niche everything down, right? In
Yes.
specific.
That's literally a perfect summary of this said topic. Is compartmentalize the audiences, prioritize the client side of things, of course, and then use that brand awareness slash engagement, those
Yeah.
engagement posts as, again, kind of that proof of concept, not proof of concept, but like authority building tool, just
Yeah.
another authority kind of cherry on top of all the other things that build your authority too.
Well, totally, right? So let's take your most popular founder in your current audience, Jeremy, as an example, right?
Mhm.
How many LinkedIn ad specialists have written to him in the last year? I would say very few, just in general. And then I'd take that even further, Jeremy. How many of them have written a post for founders and showed them the process of what they did with the customer?
Probably none.
There's the opportunity.
Yep.
right? Because for that one prospect that you would definitely, and this is where I would actually say, instead of it being like, the creepy side of like,
Saw you
I
at
saw you,
Walmart.
I saw you at Walmart shopping. Like, it's the opposite. It's like, wait a minute, who are the most valuable people inside my network right now? And how can I help them? That's how I got Oracle as a customer. It's how I hope to get Business Insider as a customer here in the next couple of weeks as well, is that you start to dissect who are the most important people that I'd love to work with. And then I'm going to write something that speaks to them. And the moment you do that, that's the difference maker on LinkedIn in our experience, and where we find what works best. And it's the same with ads, and it's the same with content on both sides.
Very well said. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, this was absolutely fantastic to run, Jeremy. I know
This is very fun. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Normally these talks for sure happen in private, don't they? On your own Zooms after calls.
Yeah, there are times where James and I are just talking and we're like, we should record this, or we should we finally have our first episode out. So this is
absolutely. So it's been fantastic to produce. I hope everybody enjoys it, of course, and we'll be making many more of these anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so just here at the end, thank you very much for listening. I will put up the QR code if you look to book a call with me and Jeremy. We do work together. We also work separately. It just depends on what your interest and budget is at. Ultimately, we like to work together, so if that's possible, fantastic. If not, no big deal. But anyway, guys, it's fantastic to sort of bring this episode to you. I hope you enjoy this hour of value. I truly feel we've revealed some things that we've definitely, they are secrets of the industries when it comes to strategies, and ultimately showed a little bit about who we are. But yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent, Jeremy. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.
Yep, you too, James. Can't wait.
Likewise.
Yep.